That's all right. That's all right. I got it, thanks. Good evening. Good to see you all here. It's good to be back. It was an interesting trip down to Arkansas, and thankfully my arm didn't get sewn to my neck or head or anything else. It's where it's supposed to be. And evidently the surgery went pretty well, so hopefully I won't have to wear this thing too much longer. Well, more than 6 weeks or so. But I want to thank you, those that for having me on the prayer list and for your prayers. I appreciate that. I have no doubt at all that it was helpful. And I also want to thank Chuck for filling in last week. I'm sure you had a very good class with him. Well, tonight we're going to pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago. And since it's been 2 weeks, we're going to go back a little bit and do some refresher. But we talked about dinosaurs. And we talked about whether or not they existed. We talked about some of the first discoveries. And then we started getting into, okay, when did they exist? Well, as we talked about, there can be little doubt that dinosaurs in some form or fashion did really exist. We've discovered their bones on all 7 continents, from North America to the Antarctic. Visitors to any of the large museums of natural history can see life-size replicas of these magnificent creatures. And all this makes it very difficult to suggest that they did not ever exist. The first discovery of the dinosaurs, as far as in recent times, occurred back in 1822. And it's amidst a bunch of stones. Some very large fossil teeth were found. And that person who found those, or actually his wife found the teeth, but he later named that the iguanodon, which literally means iguana tooth, since the teeth were similar to those of the iguana, only much larger. A short time after that, huge bones of another creature that came to be known as Megalosaurus had been dug up not far away. We started to talk a little bit about how the entirety of the, I don't know how you want to call it, but the people who dig up and look for bones of dinosaurs, the evolutionary scientists, all of these people, they're driven by a lot of different things. One of those things is that they're actually driven by a lust for headlines. They all want to have that, get in the newspaper or on the internet as having found the latest and greatest dinosaur. In a speech delivered in Vancouver, Canada in 2011, the most famous dinosaur hunter in the world, Jack Horner, admitted that scientists have egos, and those egos have driven evolutionists to discover and allege things that simply are not true and not what the evidence shows. The desire to become famous, the desire for these headlines, it's led to all kinds of errors. Studies reveal that there are errors in almost half the names that are given to dinosaurs. And according to Peter Dodson of the University of Pennsylvania, almost half, or 45.3%, of all dinosaur genera were based on a single fossil specimen. and 74% were represented by 5 specimens or less. So, do we doubt that the dinosaurs existed? Not really, but can we definitely doubt how many, all the different types? Certainly. Another reason that these evolutionary scientists and these people who look for these dinosaurs will sometimes go too far and make claims that aren't true is simply because their livelihoods depend on it. They need funding for their digs. And because they need funding, they need to make headlines so that the people funding them can make money. There are a lot of different reasons. During the last 30 years of the 19th century, we talked about fossil hunter Othniel Marsh, how he named 80 dinosaurs in that 30-year span. And this man, he had worked feverishly in hopes of becoming America's king of the dinosaurs. He had a very poor success rate. Of the 80 dinosaurs he named, only 23 are still recognized as valid. So we talked about this and how there's a lot of error in the dinosaur record. But then we talked about when dinosaurs existed. If we go with the fact that they did exist, when was this? We talked about how knowledgeable conservative Bible students are fully aware of the plain and simple teachings of the Bible concerning the creation of all life forms, including the dinosaurs. Exodus chapter 20, verse 11 could not be any clearer than it is. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. So, if God made in the 6 days of creation the heavens, the earth, the seas, and all that is in them, well, what does that leave out? And the answer, of course, is absolutely nothing. So, what does that mean? Well, quite simply, it means that dinosaurs and men lived on Earth as contemporaries, not billions of years apart. We talked about how the Bible actually does appear to talk about dinosaurs. And again, these same conservative Bible scholars look to Job chapter 40, verses 15 through 24 as evidence that dinosaurs existed. The evolutionist claims of dinosaurs living and becoming extinct long before man ever arrived, it's at odds with the scientific fact, what the scientific facts have to say. Science bears out that the Bible is correct, and that is that man and dinosaurs lived on the earth at the same time. Some of this evidence we talked about a couple weeks ago was, there's the behemoth mentioned in Job, was this here in the Sipai Canyon in Arizona. And on the walls of this canyon where the Indian ancestors once lived, elegant drawings of an elephant, a dinosaur, and other animals are found. According to the belief commonly held by evolutionists, no advanced mammals were present during the age of the dinosaurs. Well, we looked at evidence that contradicts that, and that a tiny dinosaur was actually found inside the belly of a mammal in China. This was a startling discovery to scientists who have long believed that early mammals couldn't possibly attack and eat a dinosaur. Not only do we now have additional proof of mammals coexisting with dinosaurs, but we also have scientific evidence of a large mammal eating a dinosaur. So that's where we left off a couple weeks ago. And that's where I want to pick up tonight. Go ahead and continue this thought. To complicate matters with regards to large mammals and dinosaurs coexisting, researchers reported in April of 2002 in an issue of Nature magazine, which is one of the premier science journals in the world. They reported that they now have determined that the last common ancestor of extant primates existed, as dated by evolutionary dating methods, 85 million years ago. Since dinosaurs are supposed to have died out 65 million years ago, that means the primate would have lived with the dinosaurs for at least 20 million years. One of the co-authors of the Nature paper, Christophe Saligo of London's Natural History Museum, stated in regard to that find, "What we demonstrate is that modern orders of mammals appeared well before dinosaurs disappeared." So much for the commonly held idea that dinosaurs evolved into mammals. In 1945, a German archaeologist discovered clay figurines buried at the foot of El Toro Mountain on the outskirts of Acambaro, Mexico. Things like this. Eventually, over 32,000 figurines and artifacts were found. In order to prove their authenticity, the owners had 3 radiometric tests performed by Isotopes Incorporated of New Jersey, resulting in dates of 1640 BC, 4530 BC, and 1110 BC. 18 samples were further subjected to thermoluminescent testing by the University of Pennsylvania, all of which gave dates of approximately 2500 BC. All of these dates corresponded with the dates given to pieces of pottery that were found scattered among the figurines. Interestingly, however, the dating results were later withdrawn when it was learned that some of the figurines depicted dinosaurs. Cover up. In 1990, samples of various dinosaur bones were submitted for carbon-14 dating to the University of Arizona's Department of Geosciences laboratory. Bones from an Allosaurus, Acrocanthosaurus were among those sent to the university's testing facility to undergo a blind dating procedure when the scientists were not told what they were performing tests on. Amazingly, the carbon-14 dates assigned to the fossils were 16,120, 23,760 years old, respectively. Obviously, that is a far cry from the millions of years that evolutionists suggest would be assigned to dinosaur fossils. In 1966, Dr. Javier Darque, professor of medicine at the University of Lima, Peru, was presented with an unusual rock by a local farmer. He got this rock on his birthday. On the face of the rock was a picture of a fish. When he examined it more closely, he realized that the fish that had been carved on the rock had been extinct for thousands of years. The rocks turned out to be ancient burial stones that the Indians had placed with their dead. Eventually, Dr. Cabrera located over 11,000 rocks in all. And you can go on the internet and see lots of those. Almost 1/3 of those rocks depicted specific types of dinosaurs, such as Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and various pterosaurs. So again, that leads us to ask, how could the Indians have drawn such accurate pictures of dinosaurs if they had never seen the animals or had them described by someone who had seen them? So a logical question that some people ask, well, how or have dinosaur and human fossils been found together? Well, not necessarily. Dinosaur fossils have been found on every continent that humans have inhabited and continue to inhabit. Thus, it would seem that if dinosaurs and humans really did live as contemporaries at one time, as creationists contend, human fossils would have been found alongside, near, or in the same strata as dinosaur fossils. So, is there evidence from the fossil record for their coexistence? Admittedly, at times, questions like these appear somewhat puzzling, at least at the surface. We know from the biblical record that the dinosaurs and humans coexisted, as we mentioned in Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. Everything was created then. So furthermore, many ancient paintings, figurines, rock carvings, and historical references confirm that they were contemporaries upon the earth. Still, many wonder why, at first glance, the fossil record seems not to substantiate creationist claims that dinosaurs and humans were contemporaries. Well, what could be some of the reasoning for that? First of all, fossilization is rare. We need to understand that fossils are rare, relatively speaking. Not every living plant, animal, or human fossilizes after death. In fact, it is extremely rare for things once living to fossilize. Dead animals lying in a field or on the side of the road don't fossilize. In order for something to become fossilized, it must be buried rapidly and be in just the right place. Consider as an example all the bison that were killed and left to decompose on the Great Plains of the United States. In the late 19th century, a man could purchase a window seat on a train, have the conductor stop close to a herd of American bison, pull out his rifle and fire upon the herd until he ran out of ammunition. The locomotive would then move on, leaving behind countless dead and dying animals. By the end of the 19th century, the bison population in America had been reduced from millions to approximately 500. Well, what happened to the millions of carcasses? They are not scattered all on the Great Plains today. But why? Because their flesh and bones were scavenged by insects, worms, birds, and other animals. The smallest portions were digested by fungi, bacteria, and enzymatic degradation until the buffalo remains just disappeared. Even oxygen plays a role in the breakdown of chemicals that make up living things. Evolutionary scientist James Powell described another situation where a rather large population of animals died. He wrote, "In the winter, after the Great Yellowstone fires of 1988, thousands of elk perished from extreme cold coupled with lack of food. Late the following spring, their carcasses were strewn everywhere, yet only a few years later, bones from the great elk kill are scarce. The odds that a single one will be preserved so that it can be found 65 million years from now approach zero. At best, we can expect to find fossil evidence of only a tiny fraction of the animals that once lived. The Earth's normal processes destroy or hide most of the clues." Normally, as Powell indicated, living things do not fossilize. Under normal conditions, living things decay and rot. It is atypical for plants and animals to fossilize because they must avoid even the tiniest of scavengers, bacteria, fungi, etc. For bones to fossilize, they must be buried, and the sooner and the deeper the better. Mud, silt, and other fine sediments are good for fossilization because they can block out oxygen. In that protected environment, bones and teeth may even last long enough to mineralize, but normally, carcasses do not find themselves in such environments. Okay. Although dinosaur graveyards have been discovered in various countries around the world, where thousands of dinosaur bones are jumbled together. Most people are unaware of the fact that in museums, in spite of the intense popular and scientific interest of the dinosaurs and well-publicized efforts of generations of dinosaur hunters, only about 2,100 articulated dinosaur bones, which means two or more aligned in the same position as in life, only 2,100 of those exist. There aren't as many dinosaur fossils as we're led to believe. In an article in the October 1990 issue of Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, Peter Dodson of the University of Pennsylvania reported that almost half, as we mentioned before, 45.3% of all dinosaur genera are based on a single specimen, and that 74% are represented by 5 specimens or less. Even some of the most famous dinosaurs are based on a fraction of what they were originally. For example, the 120-foot-long Argentinosaurus replica, which is housed in the Natural History Museum in Atlanta, Georgia. That huge specimen is based only on 10% of its remains, a dozen backbone vertebrae, a few limb bones, and one of the parts of the hips. The rest was just taken from other animals. Truthfully, although dinosaurs have captured the attention of scientists and people for more than 150 years, their fossilized remains are not near as prevalent as one may think. Okay, well, what about, we started off talking about human and dinosaur fossils coexisting. Well, human fossils are extremely scarce. Humans make up an infinitesimal portion of the fossil record. Due to the number of drawings of our alleged human ancestors that appear in the news on a regular basis, one might get the feeling that hominoid and human fossils are everywhere, but such is not the case. In 1981, a New Scientist article, John Reeder wrote, "The entire hominid collection known today would barely cover a billiard table." 1 year later, Lyle Watson similarly stated, "The fossils that decorate our family tree are so scarce that there are still more scientists than specimens. The remarkable fact is that all the physical evidence we have for human evolution can still be placed with room to spare inside a single coffin." In a conversation with James Powell, president and director of the Los Angeles County Museum of Natural History and renowned evolutionary paleoanthropologist, Meave Leakey gave some insight into what could be described as their frustrations in searching for hominid or human fossils. And she described it as a nearly futile hunt for human bone in a new field area as 4 years of hard work only producing 3 nondescript scraps. Very frustrated at spending so much time in an area they thought they would have results, and they only found 3 nondescript scraps that really could not be identified. In 2004, David Begun concluded an article in Science magazine titled "The Earliest Hominins is Less More," in that by admitting the level of uncertainty in the available direct evidence at this time renders irreconcilable differences of opinion inevitable. The solution is in the mantra of all paleontologists: we need more fossils. Although hominid or human fossils are among the most sought after fossils in the world, scientists readily admit that few such fossils have been found. So as you can see here, the question, why don't we find dinosaur and human fossils together is extremely misleading. The truth is, fossils themselves are rare. And of all those things that do fossilize, it appears that less than 1% are vertebrates: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, or mammals. Furthermore, human fossils make up a microscopic part of the fossil record. Searching for one is like trying to find one proverbial needle in a haystack. The real question then is not, why don't we find dinosaur and human fossils together, but where are all the human fossils? Simply because human fossils apparently have not been found with dinosaur fossils does not make the case for the coexistence of dinosaurs and humans any less credible. Think about it. Where are the human fossils that have been found with the recently extinct Pyrenean ibex? Can we prove that the dodo birds and humans once lived together by observing their fossilized remains together in a particular layer of rock? We know that they once coexisted, but can one person point to the fossil record that actually shows this information? No. The chance of finding human fossils is rare. And the chance of finding exactly the combination of fossils for which one is searching, in this case dinosaurs and humans, is even less likely. There's also lessons to be learned. What time are we looking at here? Okay. There's lessons to be learned from what we call living fossils. Excuse me. We learn from living fossils that animals and plants can live long periods of time, allegedly millions of years, without even leaving behind fossil evidence. For example, evolutionists believe the ginkgo trees, as you see there on the left, were thriving 240 million years ago, before dinosaurs allegedly evolved. Interestingly, ginkgo fossils are absent in rock layers reportedly representing millions of years. Yet, these trees are alive today. Consequently, simply because they are absent in certain rock strata does not mean that they were non-existent during the alleged millions of years it took for those layers of rock to form. And likewise, simply because human fossils are missing in certain layers of rock does not mean that they were not living at the same time those rock layers were formed. Consider also, on the right there, the living fossil known as the coalescent. I'm not sure if that's exactly how that's said. From 1839, when fossil coalescents were first discovered, from 1839 to 1938, evolutionists alleged that these fish were the missing link in the evolution of fish to amphibians. Supposedly, these fish had existed for nearly 400 million years. Evolutionists firmly believe that the coalescent became extinct about 70 million years ago, or about the same time the dinosaurs died out. They thought this because their fossils are not found in any deposits higher than this. Magazine Science News declared that coalescents disappeared from the fossil record 75 million years ago. Until 1938, evolutionists believed that men and coalescents could not have possibly lived at the same time. These creatures were known only from rock layers that evolutionists claimed to be 70-plus million years old. However, on December 24th, 1938, the scientific world was rocked when an unidentified fish 5 feet long and over 100 pounds was brought to shore in South Africa. It was caught in the Indian Ocean near Madagascar. The fishermen who netted the fish, having no idea what the creature's proper name was, called it the great sea lizard because its pectoral fins looked more like little fringed legs. Once scientists examined this strange creature, however, they confirmed what formerly was thought to be impossible. A live coalescent had been caught. And there's the picture. That they'd never thought this could happen, but it had been caught in modern times. It was as shocking as if they had found a living T-Rex. After all, for years they had supposedly thought that they had become extinct at the same time as the dinosaurs. Since 1938, more than 100 of these fish have been caught and many more sighted. In 1952, they were seen swimming near the Comoro Islands in the Indian Ocean. Another population was found in 1998 off the coast of Indonesia. Surprisingly, local Indonesian fishermen were quite familiar with this fish, having been catching them for years, though scientists were totally unaware that they lived in that region. The all-knowing scientists didn't know. So, modern-day coalescents look exactly like their fossil counterparts, which are mistakenly dated as being millions of years old. This living fossil is a thorn in the side of evolutionists. It makes a mockery of evolutionary dating methods, provides further proof of missing links, of the myths of missing links, and exposes their facts for what they really are, and that is unproven assumptions. Moreover, consider that evolutionists admit that the fossil record of the past 70 million years shows no evidence of these fish. Yet, we know they lived during this alleged 70 million years because they are still alive today. Like ginkgo trees, this fish's absence in certain rock strata does not mean that they were not living during the alleged millions of years it took the rock layers to form. It simply means that they were not buried and fossilized in those layers of rock. Similarly, humans just as easily could have been alive when the various rock layers were formed without leaving human fossils. Think about it. We have just as much fossil evidence of humans living the past 70 million years on Earth as we do these fish and ginkgos. In short, living fossils help us understand that simply because human fossils are missing in certain layers of rock, it does not mean that humans were not living at the time those rock layers were formed. So, considering that sedimentary rock, which is the type of rock which fossils are most likely to be discovered, this kind of rock covers 75% of the Earth's land area and much of the ocean's floor, and is tens of thousands of feet thick in certain places. Even if there are dinosaur and human remains fossilized in the same rock, the chance of them being exposed, discovered, recognized, and reported together is very improbable. They might have been exposed somewhere in the world today, like in a mine, cliff, or a road cutting, but unless they are discovered before the sun, wind, and rain turn them to dust, such exposure is useless to scientists. So, let's talk here briefly about humans and the flood. It could be that in the time of Noah, the human population was confined mainly to the Middle East, while most dinosaurs roamed in other parts of the world. If this was the case, and the global flood of Noah's day caused most of the fossils on Earth, as creationists believe, then one would not expect to find many, if any, humans buried with dinosaurs. What's more, humans would have been less likely than various animals to be buried rapidly and fossilized during the flood. Creationist Bodie Hodge noted, "Since the rains of Noah's flood took weeks to cover the earth, many people, unlike dinosaurs, could have made it to boats, grabbed onto floating debris, and so on. Some may have made it to higher ground, although they wouldn't have lasted long and would have eventually perished. They might not fossilize. The fact is, in most cases, living things simply do not fossilize. As we mentioned before, dead things decompose or get eaten. They just disappear, and nothing is left. The 2004 tsunami in Southeast Asia, that was a shocking reminder of the speed in which water and other forces can eliminate all traces of bodies, even when we know where to look. According to the United Nations Office of the Special Envoy for Tsunami Recovery, nearly 43,000 tsunami victims were never found, even though they knew where to look. It may very well be in the case that human and dinosaur fossilized footprints have been discovered together, or at the very least in the same vicinity or in the same layer of rock in which dinosaur tracks were found. It may also be that human and dinosaur bones have been discovered together at times in the past, but for at least two reasons were not reported. First, someone who might have found these bones in a quarry could react by saying, "Look at these old bones. Fascinating. Okay, now hurry up and hand me another explosive so we can meet our quota for the coal for the day." Not everybody is that interested in finding bones. Also, some, especially in these mining areas, the last thing they want to do is bring attention to the fact that there might be something buried in the area where they're mining, because that will get them shut down so fast. So it could be that the fossil evidence for the cohabitation of men and dinosaurs went up in smoke long ago. Secondly, it may be possible that human bones have been found by scientists alongside dinosaur fossils, yet simply has not been reported widely. Not saying that all evolutionary scientists are dishonest, but rather just saying that we can simply believe that they are blinded by presuppositions that affect their judgment, even as many Christians are. Since evolutionists seem so certain that hominid human fossils should never be found in layers of rock more than a few million years old, if they ever did, they would likely just explain away the evidence. It just cannot be, if evolution is true. There must be some explanation other than the fact that humans and dinosaurs really lived together. If evolutionists can confuse a dolphin's rib for a human collarbone, which they have done, or an extinct pig's tooth for a human tooth, which they have done, then similar mistakes could easily be made concerning human and dinosaur fossils. If one has ever been found with the other, scientists could have misinterpreted the anomaly. It may be that dinosaur and human fossils are never found together, but whether they are or whether they're not, the evidence for the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs at one time in the past is undeniable to the unbiased truth seeker. Indeed, there is a mountain of biblical, historical, and physical evidence which indicates that dinosaurs and humans once walked this earth at the same time. And I didn't get quite as far as I wanted, and I don't want to start this last bit. and have to stop. From this point, I was going to talk about, okay, so what happened to the dinosaurs? Where did they go? And that is where we'll pick up next week. Because I want to give this its due time. So we'll close at this point tonight. I appreciate your attention, and next week we'll finish up talking about dinosaurs. Thank you.